I think we can all wave and say hello to everybody. If anybody's watching on YouTube, big smiles for everybody.
Hello.
Hello. So thanks very much, guys, for coming along to this kind of live podcast. I'll just introduce myself to you guys. Well, I've met Michael before, but not so much Tino. My name's Ken, and I've been a teacher for about 12 years. And I've traveled fairly extensively. I've traveled to about 50 countries, and I've spent the last 10 years in Thailand. And I've been teaching university graduates how to pass interviews for the airlines. So I've managed to place a lot of my students into the main airlines, Qatar Airways and Emirates, etc. And October last year, I decided to come back to Scotland and set up a new kind of English learning platform so learners can kind of meet up, etc. And yeah, and I've got my Instagram account, Get English Tips, which has been going for about 15 months or so. Okay, so that's myself. Who would like to introduce themselves next? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
I guess I'll go. So,
okay,
my name is Tino Trevor. I'm from Zimbabwe originally, but I now live in Brazil where I teach English. Like Ken, I've traveled extensively, but not quite as much as he has. I've been to 30 countries and lived on 4 continents. Thailand was one of my favorite countries to visit, actually. It's always in my top 5 list. I've taught English for the past 5 years in Brazil, even though my English teaching journey did start over 20 years ago while I was in college in the United States. What more is there to say? I think that's it for now. Anything else, I'll say later on.
Excellent. Nice to meet you, Tino.
Yeah, very nice to meet you. And yeah, as for me, yeah, my name is Michael Lavers. I'm from Cornwall in England, in the UK. Maybe my history is not so long, but I've been teaching online, self-employed since like 2016 now. I've been doing Instagram and got my own podcast, all this kind of stuff as well. I love travel too. I haven't been to as many countries as you guys. I've been to maybe 23, 24.
Wow.
Catching up maybe. And yeah, Thailand as well. I think Thailand is my second favorite country. So there's something we all have in common maybe.
What's your favorite country, Michael?
Definitely Japan.
Why?
This is a weird reason, but I think it's just because I can speak the language better than any other language. So it's more enjoyable because I can, get more in touch with the culture, I can see it from a different perspective maybe.
I found when I went to Japan, I was a little bit shocked because nobody really speaks English there, it was the first time I had experienced that. And I always felt Japanese people would be very, very hard, or, from learning history at school, I always feel Japanese people are really hard. But when you're there, I've never met the friendliest people I've ever seen, The guy, if you're lost, they would kind of hold your hand and take you to wherever it is, It's so
everyone is so amazing. Yeah, so friendly.
Fantastic. So, Tino, when were you in Thailand?
Okay, Thailand. It's now a fair bit ago, 2010.
Really? Whereabouts were you?
All right, so let me see if I can remember. My recollection of names is not the best. So we spent some time in Ao Nang, Phuket, Krabi, Phi Island.
All the holiday places, yeah.
It was only about a month, so we did what we could in that period.
Fantastic, excellent. So this, as I said, this Three Teachers podcast is, I get thousands of questions, hundreds of questions a week. And as I've said before, I think to you guys, normally I would do my podcast for about 40 minutes and I just felt instead of listening to me all the time, why don't we get 3 teachers along, 3 experienced teachers and well-known teachers on Instagram, and we can go through some of the questions and get your experiences and your examples. Yeah, if that sounds fair enough. Yeah,
Yeah,
cool.
let's do it.
You know, you're from Zimbabwe. Yeah, is English the main language in Zimbabwe, or is it a different language? Excuse my ignorance.
Well, that's a complicated question to answer. Why? So English was considered Zimbabwe's main language. It was a former British colony.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, it was considered Zimbabwe's official language. And every exam I ever took in my life was a Cambridge exam from primary school all the way up to high school. But in the mid-90s, the former president who died a couple of years ago, Robert Mugabe, was having problems with the British monarch, and he was constantly criticizing them, and he removed English only in name from being considered one of the official languages.
Really?
Even though if you go to Zimbabwe, business, education, everything is conducted in English, but on paper, it's no longer considered an official language in Zimbabwe.
So what's the official languages in Zimbabwe?
So 2 main ones, Shona and Ndebele. Shona is like a dialect that was born out of Swahili, and Ndebele is like a dialect born out of the Zulu language.
All right, okay. Some of my friends in South Africa, they is it Swahili that they're able to speak, and they've got this beautiful sound. It's almost like a sound when these. Is it Swahili or is it one of the other languages? It's
that's Xhosa. I can't use it properly.
Amazing how they can speak that. You know, it's just different sounds coming out. You know. In Scotland, we have 3 languages, you know. We have English as the official, we've got the Scots language, and we've got the Gaelic language, you know. But Gaelic isn't really spoken in the main areas now, but they're trying.
Well, I kind of have a connection with Scotland because growing up, my neighbors were from Scotland. So for 18 years of my life, I grew up next to Scottish neighbors.
Fantastic. So we're all multilingual here then, yeah? Japanese, English.
To some extent, yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so let's fire into some of these. Let's fire into some of these questions that our students, and I hopefully we can learn something new from them. Okay, so we've got episode 4 of the 3 Teachers podcast. First question we've got here, what's the difference between during, while, and when? Very much a grammar question, I guess, yeah? But I guess these words are, you know, they can be quite confusing for, you know, for English learners, yeah? So I'll start off. So between during, while, and when, the way I would explain it would be during we use with a noun phrase. Yeah, so we'd say something like during my exam or during the week or during my holidays, etc. While we would use more with like the continuous tense, like 2 actions happening together maybe. So for example, while I was running for the bus, I fell. This kind of thing, yeah. And when, I guess, when is more of a general thing, you know. We use more perhaps with stative verbs or stative verbs, for example, yeah? For example, when I worked there, I loved it. So they're not actually 2 actions happening together, but more of a, you know, a general situation, yeah? Who would like to, what do you think about that? Is there anything else you would like, is there something you would like to add on to that?
Yeah, I would say that's a good explanation. I would say as well, during and while can be quite similar, as you said. I think when, let me know if you think I'm saying anything wrong.
No.
But when can also mean kind of after as well, I would say. Like when I get home, I take off my shoes. maybe that's not the best example.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking some kind of like past perfect tense as well, where like
For example.
I'm not good at examples on the spot. I had arrived home when I heard the explosion, something like that.
So more like the past perfect rather than the continuous tense, do you think?
Yeah, and I would say it's almost like one thing happens directly after the other thing, but during a while, to me, they emphasize at the exact same time. I don't know if you guys would agree.
Yeah, actually, I was going to say almost the same thing that you did, that I would use it not only with the past perfect, but past in general as well, and in questions.
We can also use it for the present as well, though, surely, yeah? For example, when I see you, I fall in love all over again, kind of thing, yeah? This kind of thing. So I guess, I mean, I think, generally, I think more like stative verbs, I guess, maybe, you know? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead, Tino?
Yeah, so compared to during, which would be used more with noun phrases, the while and when would be a lot more with the verbs. Unless I'm not thinking of other noun phrases, I would say that they're generally used more with verb phrases.
Yeah. Sorry, go on, Michael.
Sorry, another point that is kind of a additional point, which I think is always useful for learners to know, is after I'm kind of forgetting that, after when and during. No, after while and when, we would use like the gerund form, right? So we wouldn't say during to go to school. We'd say during. No, I've got the wrong one, haven't I? Sorry. Not while to go to school, but while going to school.
Absolutely.
When going to school, and not when to go to school. Or we could have the pronoun, like when I go to school. That's another thing I think is useful to know.
Interesting, yeah. We wouldn't say that during going to school, we wouldn't say, but definitely with while and when, yeah?
Yeah. While, so during's like the odd one out in that sense, isn't it?
While putting Michael on the spot, he lost his train of thought, yeah?
Well, you stopped sharing the screen. I just completely forgot what it was.
No problem. Cool. So is there anything you want to add on to that? Is that fair enough, yeah? Tino?
Yeah.
Are you okay?
Nah, I think we got it. We covered it.
Excellent. So I hope you find that useful, yeah? Right. Here we go. Some modal verbs, which are students' favorites, yeah? Students just love modal verbs, don't they, yeah? The difference between should and must and how to use them. Should and must, yeah? Who could get this one up and running?
Okay, I guess I could. Let's see. So should, I would say, is used for suggestions the majority of the time. Like, you should watch this movie. You should try this restaurant. Or even to ask questions on whether you should do something based on someone else's experience. Like, should I go there at night? Is it safe? Whereas must is more for obligations, I would say. It's like either obligations or hard set rules. So it's like you must not go there at night. It's very dangerous. Yeah, I'm kind of having trouble thinking up examples on the spot.
So we know how our students feel, yeah?
Yeah, like you mustn't talk back to your parents.
Good example, yeah?
As my parents used to tell me when I was quite young. So I'd say that's the main difference. So would anyone like to add on?
Michael?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, a good summary maybe is should is good for advice. I don't know if you said that. Like you should do this. Must is good for not quite giving orders. It's not quite an order, but it's like well, it's much stronger, isn't it? Like I really think you should do this in order to do this. So it's like should, but much, much stronger. I could add off another point, which probably makes it harder. Should I do that?
Please, please.
We can also use like must in the past as well, like speculating or guessing in the past. So when you're kind of wondering, oh, how did this big rock get here? You say, oh, it must have been aliens.
All right.
And it's kind of different in that sense, isn't it? But I guess you're saying, I'm almost certain that it was aliens.
Yeah.
But I don't think we would say it should have been, because that's not really speculation with should. There's another different grammar point there.
It's almost like, I guess, it's almost like saying I'm 99% certain of something, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
What about with must and should? Both can be suggestions as well, surely, yeah? You don't think? Like, for example, oh, you should go to Japan, it's really good. Or you must go to Japan, it's fantastic. So
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Must obviously, I guess, means you believe that more strongly. You think it's more imperative that they go.
So kind of must gives it a kind of, as you say, a kind of stress, as it were. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tino, what do you think? Anything else?
I totally agree in both. So you definitely can use it. I would say the example you gave, when you use must in a suggestion, it's you're using it for emphasis purposes. So if you say you really must go to Japan, it's not that the person must go to Japan. You're showing your enthusiasm and emphasizing that when I went, I really enjoyed it, and I believe that you will enjoy it just as much.
Absolutely.
And to add on to what Michael said, absolutely for speculation, for example, you'd be like, you're wet. It must be raining outside. So you can use it to speculate and to say, most likely this has happened. So what I can see, I'm thinking this happened, even though I don't know for certain it happened, but I have a strong suspicion that's the reason. You're wet.
Absolutely. What about another thing I just thought of there? Just because my flight attendant days, or my teaching flight attendant, when they get on the aircraft, the flight attendant, there'll be a notice on the back of the seat saying seat belts must be fastened. Obviously the passive voice. So this is that an instruction, do you think, or is that a kind of strong suggestion?
That is kind of an order, isn't it?
Yeah, that's beyond an instruction, because you kind of get into trouble for not doing it. There's a consequence to it.
Yeah.
So I'd say that it's more like trying to soften an order a little bit to make it sound like a suggestion, a strongly worded suggestion, whereas it's not really a suggestion.
Well, that's a good point. So like, rather than saying, like, if you just say, hey, fasten your seatbelt, that can be quite direct and harsh. But maybe like seatbelts must be fastened. It sounds a little bit less harsh, maybe.
I think that's the passive voice in general, isn't it? To kind of soften commands, as it were, yeah. And must kind of fits into that situation, yeah. Must is so flexible. I never actually thought about that. So many different, so many different kind of uses for it. Yeah.
You must listen to the Free Teachers podcast. Yeah.
Hey. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Great. So we've got must and shoulds. Yeah. Anything fairly went through everything here. Now, how do I become an English expert? This is, I guess students ask this all the time because they speak their own language. I guess they think it people generally do. They think it must be easy to speak another language because they do it already, you know. So, you know, they think maybe it must be easy to kind of fit into learning a new language. How do you become an expert at anything? I believe to become an expert, you need, and I've read about this, you need to take 10,000 hours of practice to become an expert. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah. So yeah, many people have asked me this question, and I'm sure every English teacher in the world has received this question. And the response I give almost sounds like a cliche at this point. I mean, you say practice, practice, practice. I mean, if you want to become an expert in anything, I mean, you've never met a race car driver who read the manual, played a video game, listened to some podcasts, and then became a race car champion. Yeah. They go on the track, they drive, they get a feel for the car, they get a feel for what they like, what they don't like, how to improve in certain areas where they're weak in. So it's just practice, practice, and practice.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
And in terms of time, I feel young people generally have more time compared to adults. So you get adults studying once a week, only in class with their teacher. And they say, I'm getting nowhere. How do I become an expert? And they stick to just the learning. Whereas young people have generally a lot more time. So beyond the classroom and beyond just learning using books and so forth, they'll be like, oh, what's my hobby? I'm really into Minecraft at the moment. Let me get with some groups on the internet. Let me check some subreddits. Let me read some captions. Let me watch some YouTube videos in English about the subject. So they take learning to a whole nother level compared to a lot of adults. And this is still learning, this is still practice, and it all adds up. And that's how they become experts.
Absolutely right. Yeah. Michael, what do you want to say?
Yeah, like I completely agree with everything Tino said. I think that's all really good, and make it fun, as you said, like with Minecraft, if that's your hobby, you know, do what you can to make it fun. I mean, maybe you spoke about the more motivational side, like how to build that. I often like to talk about the maybe slightly more boring practical side, like something that a lot of people neglect is like building habits. Because Tino mentioned time. Adults don't have much time usually. And I think it's really important to kind of have this daily habit, same time every day. That helps, where you can sit down, you have a structure, and do whatever it is you're doing. And that could be having like an online lesson, could be doing some listening, whatever it is. A little bit every day, I think, is the key to kind of see progress in anything. Like if you think of it like exercise, if you're doing it sporadically, like not on a regular basis, then you're not going to make much progress. So find that routine, and also try to find the fun side again, because using the exercise metaphor, if you're just going to do some sit-ups and then check the mirror for your abs, you're going to be disappointed because you're focused on the outcome, and you're not focused on the journey and the enjoyment of, you know, learning the language rather than just waiting for the end goal, you know.
How often do you think learners should practice before they look at their abs?
I guess you can, you know, whether it's exercise or language learning, I guess you can do it continuously. Like you can do it at any stage, I would say, as long as that's not the main focus.
What do you mean by that, Michael?
Like, you know, even if it's every other day, you're kind of thinking about your own level, like how much progress have I made in these 2 days? I think that can be a healthy thing to look at, because you're kind of seeing, you know, how is this going? Is there anything I need to tweak or improve? But as long as you're not making that the main goal, and the main goal is the making it fun, maybe that's it, making it fun. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Tino, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, no, it makes absolute sense. I almost spit out my water when Michael said. Yeah, it makes absolute sense. And to add on to what he said about as long as it doesn't become the goal, because if you're constantly working out and then checking your abs, you become obsessed on your abs and you start neglecting your arms, your legs, because you're just focused on the abs. So it's good to check on your progress, but it's also important to move forward. You can, this is why you don't do abs every day or legs every day. You need to touch up on other stuff, even if you haven't become an expert in this particular area. You go back to that part every week, or you alternate days.
I think
that's a good point.
I think having the goal is really, really important. You know, from my own experience of learning a language, I remember I would, you know, before my work, I would get the Spanish newspaper. I've told this story lots of times, and I would actually start speaking and reading the Spanish newspaper every morning for about 15 minutes and just speak when I read, you know, me llamo Ken, yo tengo, blah, blah, blah. And I would speak it. And I felt after about a month, my Spanish went from here to here, you know, just short, as you said, Michael, just short kind of, you know, I don't know, it's just short hits into the language. So you don't become, I guess, not too bored, but too overawed by everything. You know, everything becomes too much for you. You do it a lot, I guess, yeah. And I think a lot of students as well maybe feel that they're under kind of like pressure as well to have the end goal. So kind of making it as fun as possible is really, really kind of important, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of, maybe just to summarize what we were saying, or what I was saying, another metaphor that you could use is like if you're taking a long journey in a car, like you could think about, like, the question could be, you know, how can I get to the end of this journey as soon as possible or in the best way possible? But maybe the question itself is not the best question to ask. You know, maybe you should be asking, how can I make the journey more efficient, or how can I make the journey more fun? But not focus on just where you're going, because else the entire journey is going to be miserable and you'll be really impatient.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember, again, I'll tell you a story. When I was in Spain, I remember looking for an apartment to rent, and I was very, very shy speaking Spanish. I would cover my mouth, you know, like this, you know. And I thought, oh, there's an apartment, a beautiful apartment. Let's you know, stay Aguilar, had the phone number, so I wrote it down. But then, as you said, you know, I kind of wrote a dialogue. What am I going to say? What are they going to reply? How's the conversation going to go? And I kind of practiced on that, and I made that my little stops, you know, my pit stops on my learning, you know, to see how far I was progressing. And a couple of days later, I had the courage and I phoned up, and the conversation went exactly how I thought it would go, you know, and I got the apartment. But I was very, very tough. I was very, very, you know, I was really pleased with myself that I'd seen myself taking that little bit of progress, you know. So which is cool, man. I remember you speak Portuguese, you know, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. I lived in Portugal for a couple of years, and I learned to speak a little bit of Portuguese. And when I moved to Spain, the Spanish and Portuguese language is very, very similar, you know. But the Portuguese is almost like a German Spanish, a German accent, you know. So when I moved to Spain, I thought this will be easy. My God, the accent is so different, you know.
Oh yeah. That happened to me because I started learning Spanish when I lived in Texas, because that's what you do in Texas.
Yeah.
The closest neighbor is Mexico. But after meeting my now wife, back then girlfriend, I kind of abandoned my journey into Spanish because at first I thought, oh, the languages are similar enough, and but the differences are broad enough and the accents are very different. Like the Portuguese accent from Portugal and the Portuguese accent from Brazil are night and day as well.
It's night and day, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. And even when we speak about Spanish, I remember my first trip to Barcelona from the US, and I was using my Mexican Spanish, and I was like, this is not the same. And they do this thing. I don't like calling it a lisp thing because people get angry, but I don't remember what it's called. And they go, cerveza.
Cerveza, yeah.
I'm like, what are they saying? Why don't they just say cerveza like they do over there? And then in Peru, they say cerveja. So now it's like 3 different pronunciations and accents for the same language.
It's funny, I was in Costa Rica for a while, and my friend's there, really funny, he was speaking Spanish in Costa Rica, and then he started speaking Spanish, but with a Spanish accent, you know, and I could really see the difference between them, you know, it's really funny. Do you think accents are really important? Because this is something I get asked all the time. How do I improve my English accent? And I've never, you know, only until I started using Instagram did I get this question from my students in Thailand. It was never a problem. What's your thoughts on accents?
Okay. Let's say, I'll go. So for me, this one is a simple question. I'm like, everybody, and I mean absolutely everybody, has an accent. It doesn't matter what language you speak, and it doesn't matter what country you're in. In the UK alone, there's at least 17 different accents. So I think what people mistake for accent is usually a matter of pronunciation.
Yeah.
So accent, in my opinion, doesn't matter. What's important is pronunciation. If you're spot on with your pronunciation and you communicate well, people don't care about your accent. In fact, a lot of people find accents endearing, but as long as you speak well, as I find a lot of Latin and Asian people worry about the accent, but if you look at a lot of Europeans across the continent, they speak English very well, but with their own accents, and they never worry about, ooh, I need an American accent, I need a British accent.
Absolutely. What do you think, Michael?
I 100% agree. That's actually exactly what I was going to say. Sorry to steal your point, but yeah, I do think there's a important distinction between accent and pronunciation, and maybe a kind of a confession I can make.
All right.
You know, I've had quite a few non-native English speaking friends over the years, and to be honest, I think if they did have an English accent, I feel like I would like them a little bit less, because
really,
well, I mean, did you say the accent makes them endearing, right? Like the fact they have an accent, it's just more interesting. I think probably sounds better. Like there's so many accents I love to hear. It's almost like listening to music.
Yeah.
And it's so much nicer for me than just hearing accents similar to mine every day. It's interesting. Is the difficult thing is, though, I think when it comes to English learning is, I don't know if we can get around this, but like students are kind of students are encouraged to learn like received pronunciation or like standard kind of British accent, whatever that is. You know, I'm sure you know about this, Ken, but you don't see many learners wanting to learn like a Scottish accent, and quite often if they
cry.
Yeah, exactly. It's not fair. And if you know, many teachers, if they hear a learner saying, I'm not going to mimic it, but if they hear a learner saying like a Scottish or maybe Irish pronunciation, they might correct that because it sounds like a mistake. And that's always a tricky thing that I come across, is like, I don't know if that's a mistake.
I think the RP is kind of very, very dated. You know, it's it always reminds me of like the 1940s kind of cinema, you know, and the old style news from it. You know, I actually heard that there's only about 3% of British speakers will actually have you know, the RP accent. You know, it's very, very low now, you know. And I always try and say to people, it doesn't matter. Are you a clear speaker? That's the most important thing, you know. And are you putting your point across? That's the most important thing, I guess. Yeah. For accents, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt again, but another thing that
Yeah.
I love to think about is, you know, accent is kind of a sign of where you're from. So I think it's something you should be proud of. And also it's kind of, you know, maybe people like Tino who have lived in many places around the world. The accent kind of like is almost like a history of where you've been. You know, pick up a little bit from here and there, and it's almost like a little map.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing, and I think people should be proud of whatever accent they have. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I sorry, Tino, you're going to continue?
That's an excellent point. So if you focus on clarity and pronunciation, it's good. But also, like Michael said, yes, accent is your rhythm and intonation. It shows where you're from, where you were raised, but also it shows your journey. Because after you kind of learn English after a period of time, where you live, how you speak, the influence of the target language on you after a period of time will definitely kind of meld or merge or influence your accent. Because a lot of people have asked me, where's your accent from? And a lot of people will quickly say, yeah, oh, it's a British accent. And I'm like, well, if you put me in a room with some British people, I'm sure they can tell that there's quite a few elements to my accent, which are not British. So yes, it definitely has a lot of British influence because one, Zimbabwe is a former British colony.
Yeah.
Two, my time living in the UK. But a lot of the words I use, the way I draw out some of my words, it's a lot of influence from my time living in Texas.
Yeah.
And there are also elements from the Shona language in Zimbabwe. So if you hear how I pronounce certain words, you can kind of hear it as well. And also, I can say that I have different cachets of English within me. I don't know if that makes sense. So it's like when I visit my friends in the US, my English kind of turns and becomes really American, and I can say things not only in an American way, but in a more Texan way. I use a lot of Texan jargon, pronunciation, and so forth. Same thing when I go to Zimbabwe, if I'm speaking to my parents or with people from the rural areas over there, I use more of African English, for lack of a better term, because I know Africa's 53 countries, so it's really overgeneralized. And if I'm in the UK, my vocabulary and everything changes as well. It's more like I start using things like made, bang on, knackered, blah, blah, things that I wouldn't use necessarily if I'm in the US or in Zimbabwe, or depending on the level of the student in Brazil as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you go traveling as well, your accent and your vocabulary and how you speak actually becomes more, not flat, but it becomes less regionalized, if you like, you know, becomes so everyone can kind of get a grasp of what you're saying. I know when I spoke to my brother on Skype after not speaking for a few months, and immediately he went into the Scottish Dundonian accent where I'm from, and took me about 2 seconds to actually grasp on to what he was actually saying, you know. Excellent, interesting stuff. Okay, let's see, what have we got here? Here's a great words, and I get asked this all the time. The word is rather. How to use the word rather? What does rather mean, and how to use it? Where are we here? And how to use it? Yeah. Who would like to start? Michael?
Yeah. I guess there's a few ways to use it, right? Like one is in comparisons. So I would, so we often say with would, yeah, like I would rather do this than this. And we often say rather than.
Right.
I guess we use would because it's kind of hypothetical, isn't it? We're not saying this is definitely going to happen. So we don't say will, we'll say would because it could maybe happen. Yeah, I would rather talk with you guys than go to a party, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. I
think
that's what I've got now.
Sorry, Michael, go on.
No, that's it. I was just ending.
I was going to say there that's important. But when a native speaks, we wouldn't generally go, I would rather. An important part of English speaking is using the contractions. You know, instead of saying I would rather, I would rather go to Spain than to France. But I like France. So instead of saying that, I would say I'd rather, yeah, I'd rather, or I'd rather, yeah. So
yeah,
contractions in speaking is quite important. Actually.
Yeah, I'd rather go to Spain.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think, Tino?
I would say that I'd use it as a substitute for instead of or prefer. It's like using the example you gave. I'd rather go to Spain. So this we're implying that compared to somewhere else. So I would say instead of blah, 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 I would like to go to Spain instead, or I would prefer to go to Spain instead. So yeah. So it's something that I'd use to show preference or in comparison to something else.
Yeah. What about rather using it as very? For example, it's rather cold. It's rather hot. Yeah. Your accents are rather nice. Yeah. How would you describe that?
That's kind of like quite, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like quite cold. It's quite hot. Yeah.
What does quite mean though? Quite has two meanings, doesn't it? Because I always think that if you say it with a kind of strong accent, it means very. For example, it's quite hot here, you know. But if you say it with a kind of light accent, it's quite hot, meaning that it's not really very, you know. So it can be quite a little bit confusing. Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Well, that's now going into intonation, because intonation can really change the meaning of a lot of things.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I would never use rather in the way you mentioned, Ken. I would never say like, it's rather warm. I don't know why. Do you think it's more formal than quite, maybe?
I think it probably is a little bit formal. It was rather busy. I guess it can be quite formal and you're trying to kind of speak. Maybe if you're at a job interview or you know, you're speaking to your boss or you're wanting to impress someone with your language, then I guess rather as a substitute for very would probably work really, you know? Yeah. So I think, yeah.
I feel like my mum would say it, but I just never say it for some reason.
Yeah, even in my head, all I can hear is the formalities. I'm picturing people in suits at formal events. It's a rather good turnout.
I was speaking to a couple of teachers yesterday, Ronan and Ned, and we were discussing the word fancy. And in the you know, across the pond, if you like, in the North America, if they said the word fancy, just what you said, you know, they would think, oh, you're being very posh by saying the word fancy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I guess we just say fancy for everything, really. You fancy a drink, fancy something to eat.
It's quite casual, yeah.
It's quite a casual word, isn't it, in British English, yeah?
Exactly. You know, I have American friends that I confused once by inviting them to a fancy dress party. And they're like, I don't really dress all that fancy. I prefer jeans and a t-shirt. Not exactly what I meant.
So wait, what would Americans call it then?
Costume party.
Oh, okay, interesting. Interesting. I never
Really?
knew that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Costume party.
But yeah,
A fancy costume party.
it doesn't make sense if you think about it. Fancy dress. It's not fancy. Like, why do we say that? I don't know.
I think that probably comes in my mind. If you say fancy dress like that, it kind of, I would imagine the 1920s, you know, doing, you know, with the feathery costumes, etc. That maybe that's where it comes.
Maybe, yeah.
Always in my mind, I've got that, you know? Fancy dress. But rather, that's interesting that you think rather's quite an old word for older people. I'm going to stop using it. Excellent, good stuff. Anything you want to add to that? No?
No.
No, excellent. Okay. We've got a couple more. Okay, how and when to use I suppose at the beginning or at the end of a sentence? I suppose. Again, I feel that this is a very, very native English speaker kind of filler word, if you like, to begin a sentence, you know. And I think if students can use it, it would really kind of enhance their speaking and their vocabulary, yeah? What would you say about I suppose, Tino?
So first, I'd say that I think it's definitely a lot more British. You hardly hear Americans use it. Americans would use I guess rather than I suppose. So it's, I think it depends because I'm also finding that almost like rather, it's also starting to get a little dated. Fewer and fewer people are using suppose now. But I would say you can use it both in the beginning of a sentence or towards the end. And I feel also that it makes your English a little bit more formal. And definitely if a language learner used it, it would, especially if they use it correctly, it would take their English up a notch. Someone would feel that, yeah, this person has got more of a grasp or a command of the English language.
What would you say the meaning of it is, I suppose, you know?
So, how would I define suppose? I'd say that with the relative confidence, I would say that probably means with the relative confidence. So say, I suppose, let me see. Now I can't think of an example on this. Let's see, okay. I suppose if I wasn't an English teacher, I would most likely still be in the corporate world.
Yeah.
We could say, yeah, with the relative confidence, I can say that if I wasn't teaching English, I'd probably still be working in the corporate world. I could say that, yeah, the definition would be that you use it to show a relative degree of confidence about whatever you're saying.
Okay, cool. Michael, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. So I guess it's like, well, I suppose it's like, as I'm doing now, when, yeah, you're almost sure of what you're saying, but there's some uncertainty. Yeah. I thought of 2 points. Like, first of all, I hear it quite a lot. But I often hear it almost shortened, more casual, and it's like suppose, like one syllable, like I suppose so, I suppose so. And I think that's becoming more, that's more common with younger people, maybe, I don't know. Another thing for me is, this is just me, maybe, but if I say I guess, like I guess this is the answer, that seems a little bit more certain. Suppose is a little bit more uncertain, just for me. Like, I suppose this is the answer. Maybe because it's longer and I'm trying to fill my uncertainty for a longer time. But they're very similar, really, I would say.
I would say as well, just going by the American side, they'd say, and I guess, and the British probably saying, I suppose. I was thinking there, at the beginning of a sentence, I would generally say it much stronger than at the end of a sentence. I suppose you're gonna say that, yeah? You're gonna say that, I suppose. So it's almost like it kind of goes down in strength at the end of a sentence, yeah?
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
What does I suppose so mean? Because that's different to what Tino said. Tino said with the degree of confidence. I suppose so.
Suppose so.
To me, it implies that there's no enthusiasm to your request.
Yeah. I think it can mean a lot of things depending on the context and the tone of your voice, maybe. I suppose so. Yeah, I suppose so. Means I probably think you're right. Well, I suppose so. Like, obviously less, enthusiasm, as you said.
Yeah. Is that the same in the kind of American English, you know? I guess so.
Yeah, definitely. They use that a lot as well. You want to go to the movies? Just so.
No enthusiasm at all for it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Suppose so. Good words for learners to use, I guess. Yeah.
Maybe you're not sure about it, but
I'm not. Okay, so let's see. We might get one more in, maybe two in. What's the meaning of Fuddy Duddy? Now, this made me laugh when it came through. It's just like it's not a normal kind of word that you would teach someone, you know. So I've no idea where they got it from. Yeah, but Fuddy Duddy.
Have
you heard this word before?
I've heard it before, but I can't be sure of the meaning. I've personally never used it in my life.
I think it's a very British thing to say, yeah. Fuddy Duddy, Michael, do you want to start?
I've heard it quite a few times, but again, I've never ever used it. I don't tend to use many casual words, I think, but does it kind of mean like a bit all over the place, or a bit messy, or chaotic, or something like that?
I think we use it a lot in Scotland, I think, or older people will, and it's maybe an archaic word now, but Fuddy Duddy, we would use it for someone who is probably acting older, you know, like very, very old than what they actually are. You know, maybe they're not being very direct. They're another English word, faffing. They're faffing around, you know. They're not doing something direct. They're being a bit all over. I guess you're right, all over in their mind about what they want to do. Yeah, a Fuddy Duddy. Maybe they're walking slow in front of you, and you want to push them. You know, to walk faster. They're being a bit of an old person walking. Hopefully that doesn't sound bad, but you know, they're maybe being older than what they are. I guess. Yeah, Fuddy Duddy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not so familiar with it. That's interesting. So is it kind of like this? Maybe another guess from me, but is it almost like, could you use it when people are being fussy as well, like you're being too picky, or is it not quite the same?
Yeah, I guess so. They're being fussy because they're acting kind of more mature or older than their years, I guess. Yeah, Fuddy Duddy. Interesting that you never used that, yeah. Because immediately when I saw it, I realized, all right, this is a word that, you know, that I hear a lot, you know.
Maybe it is more common in Scotland. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah, interesting. Yeah, maybe interesting. I saw that. Okay, let's have a look at one more because I know we're pushing for time here. Right, here's one. Let's get started. I don't understand the get rule. Yeah, get is a great word in English. It's so versatile. So we can use it for different meanings, etc. Let's get started. What does get mean here for you guys? Let's get started.
Tough
I
one.
think for me, it's an auxiliary. Yeah, really, that's just reinforcing started. Because you can say, let's start and not have to use started.
Mm-hmm.
I think it really reinforces it. And when you say the get rule, I don't know if there is one rule for
Uh-huh.
get, because get is such a versatile word, as you said, that can be used in so many different situations.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Michael?
Oh, well, I'm glad Tino went first because this is a hard one for me. I never know how to explain these ones. I mean, one thing I could say is, another example like "let's get going,"
Yes.
something like that. I guess it's probably not a rule, but maybe it's often like get than ing word, maybe.
Mm.
Um, I would say it sounds more friendly, like friendlier, and it kind of softens it as well. Like
Mm.
if you just say "let's go,"
Mm.
it's not rude, but it's a little bit blunt and just quite flat. Not so friendly. But yeah,
Mm.
let's get going. It sounds a bit more welcoming and nice.
Mm.
Um, the rule, I'm not so confident. I've never taught this before, to be honest, but
Right.
I can at least explain that feeling I get from it.
Yeah. I think get. I did a couple of videos for get before, and I did some research into the word get, and it came up with like I think there must have been about 12 different, substitute verbs that could be used for it. And when I saw this question, I thought, it's almost like we transition from not being started to starting. So it's almost like, I guess, the rule. I'm thinking of the word become. Let us become started. That kind of transition, if you like, from one state to another is the rule. But as you say, let's get started sounds much more friendly and much more eager to start. Yeah.
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 That's interesting. This is another thing I always wonder. Like, do you think it would be useful for learners to learn the rule and like the reason why, like you said, like become started, or
Mm.
do you think it's in this case it's better to say like just accept it? We say this. Don't worry about the reason why.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think it's really important when students are learning vocabulary. Sometimes forget, as you say, forget the rule, learning kind of expressions and learning sentences rather than learn the vocabulary or the grammar rule behind it, just,
Yeah.
Hmm.
I do that a lot with students. I say some things. It's not that you're being a lazy teacher or anything, but some things are pointless, and native speakers uh, don't even know themselves the etymology of a lot of things.
yeah.
So when people ask you, why say but cut, but then say put, say, because it's English, accept it.
It's true though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is true. Learning, just accept it sometimes, just accept it. Excellent. Is there any questions? Anything you want to add into today? I think our hour's almost up. So, um, anything you want? Any words of wisdom you want to give our learners who are perhaps tuning in? Michael?
Oh no, I'm not very like pithy. I'm not good at this, but maybe not. I don't know. Just keep studying, make it fun. Try
Uh-huh.
to find a routine.
Mhm.
That's my advice.
You do online lessons, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if anyone's like want to touch base with you or get in touch with you, I'll leave your contact details in the program notes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Are
that'd be
you
awesome. Yeah.
are you mainly on Instagram? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean everywhere in Instagram. Yeah, you can email me. Yeah, that's fine. YouTube
What,
as well.
what's your podcast name?
My
Little
podcast
plug.
it's changed since you were on it
Oh,
last
really?
year. Yeah. So it used to be English with Michael, but now
Yeah.
it's called the Level Up English Podcast.
The
So
Level
it's
Up English.
The name.
yeah, more I don't know, less about me, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, check it out if you're interested. Anyone watching?
In all good Apple platforms. Yeah.
Exactly.
Any words of wisdom?
I'd just say, if you really want to improve your English, just put in the work. Practice, practice, practice. Here I go again with that old cliche.
Exactly. And are you mainly on Instagram as well?
Yep, just Instagram and YouTube. Same name on both, The English Experience.
The English Experience, fantastic. So check these guys out and give them a follow on their social media channels. You won't be disappointed. And obviously myself as well, get English tips if you haven't already done so. Yeah, guys, it's been a pleasure to talk with you, Michael. I've not spoken to you for a year. Tino, the first time I've spoken to you, it's been great. I hope you found it worthwhile as well. And I really, really hope you can come back on board to join us again on a future podcast. Yeah.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been so much fun. Yeah, thank you very much.
Excellent. Okay.